Did you know birds have a back door to their lungs? That is for the buoyancy and boost power they need for flight. They also have air sacs on the sides of their lungs for life-giving oxygen. That's the reason they can fly clear across the ocean and never have to stop. I ask you, have you ever seen a bird panting after a flight? And our jet was patterned after this spectacular aviator. That's just another gem I found on my favorite DVD, God of Wonders. Okay, I promised I would bring the principle of thought responsibility to you this week. It's a valuable tool for harmlessness, which we spoke about last week. Again, I want to remind you that I desire only to share with others what I have found to flipside my own desperate life, principles which I have proven before I speak of them, so as not to get your hopes up, but to reassure and encourage you to step forward with no fear, but rather in excited anticipation of promises made and kept by God. You alone are responsible for allowing your soul to guide you in confirmation. It is written in the Ageless Wisdom teaching, I'm going to read this to you so I don't miss anything, that thought is the true friend of the seeker. Thought rules everything. Thought is inherent in each movement of the muscles. Thought leads and affirms. Thought finds the paths to the covenants and the decrees. Thought, if not scorned, teaches discrimination between the higher and the lower. Thought lives on perpetually and into infinity. It affirms movement and the realization of rhythm. Thought does not forsake one by day nor by night. Thought uplifts the consciousness when the process of thinking becomes cherished. You will be getting tools today to get you to that very state of cherished thinking. It's important that you understand thought is more valuable than the word because it has no borders and it is restricted only when clothed by words. The manifesting power of thought exceeds that of its alternate identity, the word. Those before us, in ages which recognized the principle and utilized its power, such as the experiences in the Tower of Babel and Atlantis, were on purpose creators, proving the principle of thought. Yet, lacking the resolve of such a responsibility, the principle proved itself in its consequences of misuse, and chaos ensued in both cases. Need I remind you that misuse of the principle of thought, when using it for evil or deviousness or vengeance, anything against goodwill, returns to the sender tenfold, and that a principle is infallible? To avoid such a downfall once again for mankind as a whole or individually, there are three divinely ordered steps to be taken before constructing a manifesting thought. Get your pencil and paper. Before a thought form is constructed, 1. Envision its purpose. 2. Ascertain its goal. And 3. Verify the motive. We are to act as a thinker and learn that it is not right to prostitute our thoughts to the base use of separative desire, that is, selfishness and greed. The energy of thought is for the good of all and to the furtherance of God's plan. Use it not selfishly. Now keep these written down steps close to help you retrain your thinking. As well, we must consider several things in the process of retraining the mental planes. A. We must purify our lower desires so that we are enabled to see clearly in the spiritual sense, that is, with spirit eyes. B. We must acquire the ability to lose sight of our own base selfishness and desires to that of group interest and good. In that way, we cooperate with God's plan. We must secure control over the mind. C. We must develop the ability, through the steps laid out and through concentration, to connect with the higher self, and thus bringing about the realization of one's individual share in that plan. D. We must be diligent and determined to practice perfecting the thought form, and as a servant of the plan of God, Learn how to send it on its mission. All activity of every kind is the result of thought forms built consciously or unconsciously, of self-initiated thought forms, or of the effect of the thought forms of others, and of responsiveness to one's own inner impulses, or of responsiveness to the impulses of others, and therefore to group thought forms. There is no life so circumscribed and no person so situated who cannot begin to work intelligently and to build thought forms under the principle and with understanding. There is no day in any man's life, particularly if he is desirous of right thinking, when a man cannot work in mental matter, control his use of thought, and watch the effect of his mental processes on those he contacts, and so handle his mind stuff that he becomes more and more useful. A thought form can also act as a poisoning agent and poison all the springs of life. A violent dislike, a gnawing worry, a jealousy, a constant anxiety, and a longing for something or someone may act so potently as an irritant or poison that the entire life is spoiled and any service is rendered futile. The entire life, we've seen it in others, is embittered and devitalized by this self-inflicted worry, hatred, and desire. All relationships with other people are rendered equally damaged and even definitely harmful, for the worried or suspicious one spoils the home circle or his group of friends by his inner poisonous attitude, and that is governed by a self-implanted idea, and which has a life so powerful that they can poison him. His relation to his own soul and his strength in the contact with the world of spiritual ideas is at a standstill, for he cannot progress forward and is held back by the poison in his mental system. Intense prayer and deep understanding need to be sent to such a one while keeping distance from danger and yet loving, for we are all one, remember. Okay, it looks like we need to take a break here. Go refresh your coffee or whatever, but be sure and listen to this valuable commercial and come right back. We got lots more to talk about. The necessity for clear thinking and the elimination of idle, destructive, and negative thoughts becomes increasingly apparent as the soul progresses on his way. As the power of the mind increases, and as the human being differentiates his thoughts increasingly from mass thought, he inevitably builds thought substance into form. That means creating and manifesting. It is at first automatic and unconscious, and he cannot help doing so. And fortunately for the race, the forms constructed are so feeble that they are largely innocuous, or so in line with mass thought that they are negligible in their effect. But as man evolves, his power and his capacity to harm or to help increases, and unless he learns to build rightly and correctly to motivate that which he has built, he will become a destructive agency and a center of harmful force, destroying and harming not only himself, but equally hurting and harming those in his circles. Another thing to remember is that our thoughts and attitudes resulting from them are carried with us from lifetime to lifetime. Have you never had a speeding thought whiz through your mind and wondered where the heck it came from? As it is not the way you think or even what you are in this present human experience. It's a fragmented thought that has no power. Let it keep going and it will never return unless you grab it and bid it welcome once again, thus giving it power. It's part of the clearing out process written in 2 Corinthians 10:5. So make wise your choices of thoughts to embrace. If you have thoughts which perpetually annoy or rule your personality, start with a list. I had to do that and it worked. I made a list of 2 columns, cons labeled the first one and pros the second. In the cons column, I listed all the thoughts I needed most urgently to discard, and in the pros column directly across from it, I listed its opposite. or at least a peaceful thought, or even the word lie, ignore, to jump to when each con thought showed signs of invading. I even had to physically shake my head sometimes as though shaking off a leaf from my hair, and then grabbed the list that I kept in my pocket and jumped over to the thought I had prepared, rather, prepared. I would dwell on that delightful pro thought until I was able to move on in freedom from the con thought. As I was faithful and determined in that practice, the time between episodes grew longer and longer. It was before I understood the validity of the principles, but I did eventually recognize how the universe, God, the divine principle, had stepped in amidst all that effort and helped me through it, changing circumstances and providing strength and courage and spirit eyes to see light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak. Always keep an attitude of gratitude forefront of your mind. It is the greatest healer and the gatekeeper for success to all your spiritual endeavors. Your prayers will be answered, but not just by asking and continuing as is. We have to do our part as much as is able to bring it about on the physical plane. It's part of working out your own salvation. If you ask for help to curb your appetite and lo, you find it so, yet still reach for the habitual foods in spite of the lack of appetite, you have imprisoned your very answer to prayer. How do I know that, you ask? You figure that out. But didn't I promise to never speak of a principle without proving it first? The ancient wisdom teaches that there is an opposite to everything, and they speak quite often of the pairs of opposites. And in thinking about the pairs of opposites and the thought process, I am amazed at how often that pairs of opposites archetype emerges in the soul perfection process. For instance, in the effort to change the mindset and thought process of that of generations of tribal tradition, it is necessary to change from that process of thinking like the world to that process of thinking like the subtle world, that of God's, the divine. In the process of putting it into practice, I find I must isolate each stinkin' thinkin' and replace it with the complete opposite, as I spoke about. Fortunately, the positive thought has more power than and can cancel the negative thought, for the traditional thinking is quick to escape the intended snare, requiring a purposeful backtrack. Therein, we create our own world, utilizing the law of attraction to attract that life we prefer, removing ourselves from that merry-go-round of the miserable life we have been unknowingly creating for ourselves. Through his principles, God has said, "Ye are gods," because he has given us this power, his power, omniscient, omnipresent, omnipotent. It is called grace. It also speaks heavily to the words in the Holy Bible to speak the words you desire, not the words you presently perceive. Let the weak say they are strong. This was exhorted because of the power he has given us, the power to create with words and thoughts, as he did. In putting this exercise into practice, one may think they are lying, but let yourself make a choice. Whenever you answer, you have to be in agreement with one or the other, that of the world's perception or that of the subtle world's fact. Oh, that we could comprehend the power at our beckon, the pairs of opposites, its abuse and its promise. Age of Wisdom tells us again, at this time of our evolution, man sets up creative energies unconsciously and in ignorance of the principle of sound and their effect. The occult, that's hidden, invisible behind the scenes, work that he is carrying on is thus unknown to him. Oh, happy day! I say that we eventually get to speak less, know more, and construct more accurate thought forms, which will produce powerful effect on the physical levels. I love to ponder on such a condition for Earth and all humanity. We are told there is no hurry, there is no need to emphasize speed in your life. There is much time for growth, both here and in the other states of being. Yet, we need not wait. We can begin and see visible results immediately. It is not easy to learn to think, and even more difficult to attain high quality of thought. It is necessary to apportion a certain amount of time daily to the mastery of thought, for every thought must be pure as a diamond. Contemplate on how to receive the principles in your life more easily. The busiest people can devote an hour each day to the approach of the principles. Daily, we partake of food, and if we go without, the day is deemed miserable. But our spirit also receives nourishment from thought, and without it, the day is even criminal. So let us magnify our thoughts. Force is not necessary, because when one walks the path to rightful thinking, all that would impede will be bridled. That is a principle, a promise of God. Much that is to be seen now of a distressing nature in the world can be directly traced to the wrong manipulation of thought matter by man, due to lack of awareness of the principle of thought responsibility. Aspire to these changes in your thought process. What you think sets up what you say, thus creating to exactness. It can no longer be a Russian roulette type of creation for those sincerely on the path. Practice of this powerful principle will automatically slide you into a life of harmlessness. That principle to which you were earlier exhorted to commit to practice, and which brings about your blissful life. Along with the practice of the steps in the principle of harmlessness, add the practice of the steps listed earlier to bring about right thinking and control of thoughts. It seems like an impossibility, but I attest to you now that it is not, and it is well worth the diligent effort to raise yourself in consciousness and awareness of your own innate abilities, ultimately making you, too, an on-purpose creator. There is nothing so liberating as having cleared out the garbage and fragmented thinking and being the master of your own thought process, knowing well what results you want and can produce. The very moment a person becomes consciously powerful in his mental plane, their power for good is increased 100-fold. So never give up. Always persist. Failure never prevents success. Difficulties develop the strength of the soul. The secret to success is ever to stand ready and to be impersonal. Now, in view of all this, it may seem an impossibility to grasp and understand, but careful contemplation and quiet reflection will bring enlightenment and lead to the awareness of the techniques of your soul as it uniquely guides you in the way best to that goal of principal success. Alice Bailey writes in her book Ponder that slowly there is dawning upon the awakening consciousness of humanity the great paralleling truth of God immanent, divinely pervading all forms, conditioning from within all kingdoms of nature, and expressing innate divinity through human beings. There is a growing and developing belief that Christ is in us as he was in the Master Jesus, and this belief will alter the world affairs and mankind's entire attitude to life. And she quotes, "See to thy aura, O traveler on the way." So you see how each sincere effort made to follow the principles and reaching for right living can speed us towards such a splendid goal. I love to contemplate on that change in the world. No man is ever put into circumstances which are insurmountable once he has put himself intelligently on the side of evolution, of God. Until that time, as we all know, we will be driven by gales of circumstances. The pressures of group and racial karma force us into situations necessary for the process of awakening to our own innate possibilities. Every step of the way to knowing those innate possibilities has to be carved out by each man himself, and there is no shortcut or easy road out of the darkness and into the light. Nothing in heaven or hell, on earth or elsewhere, can prevent the progress of the person who has awakened to the illusion of this world, who has glimpsed the reality beyond the glamour of this life, and who has heard, even if only once, the clarion call of his own soul as it has been tapped for attention. One of my favorite books, Agni Yoga, states this, and I found it very interesting. Perhaps you will too. I'll quote it. In observing the history of humanity's development, entire periods of growth in consciousness can be seen. Let us not conceal that precisely now a book of discoveries and of the light of daring is being opened before humanity. This ripened fruit of the thorny travail of the community is ready to burst with seed. Can one split this fruit with the sword, or crush it through fright or through cringing cowardice, or usurp it through treacherous cunning? No, only unity of consciousness and the gaining of knowledge will bestow on humanity the gift of a new race. The impetus toward this will be afforded not by cosmic phenomena, but by the current of thought. We shall not miss the ordained date when lightning bolts of thought will provide the solution for the world. We suggest that humanity not only think about, but realize the astrochemical moment of the planet when thought, like a chemical ingredient, will intensify the atmosphere. In any case, until the significance of the emanations of thought is realized, thought will glide over the foreheads of skeptics. Always remember, sincere effort counts in the practice of this principle, and it too is the way of the soul perfection process. Step forward in the confidence that the entire universe flies to your aid. As your sincere desire for right thinking and living registers in the heavens the energies which rule our planet, the tools you seek will arrive. It has long been understood that when the student is ready, the teacher appears. You can find a transcript and much more information on the principle of thought responsibility, as well as the audio and other blessings, on my website, amritanicolemarketing.com. Have a blessed weekend on this note from DeLee. Choose to be a full, colorful spectrum as you. Release with blessings the thought-filled seeds and leaves as you have bloomed.